Start with reciting Namo Tassa and the three refuges for those who like to join. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Welcome, friends, to this Wednesday evening Sutta study, and I hope you're all able to get the attachment to the Sutta. So this week we are going to be going over a very important Sutta, but one which is kind of not one of the biggies, not one of the ones that's is often talked about, like some of the Mahasatipatthana or some other suttas. So it's number 109 in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Mahapunnama Sutta. And this means the discourse on the full moon night. So, in the time of the Buddha, and nowadays, of course, the full moon days are days when the monks come together and recite the Patimokkha monastic discipline, and then usually, stay up much of the night meditating and hearing Dhamma talks. Now, this sutta is, focused on the five aggregates. And really the five aggregates is one of the most important groups of Dhamma that, in the Buddha's teaching. There's so many suttas talking about the five aggregates, and it essentially it's, the Buddha says, it's because of not understanding these five aggregates in relation to the Four Noble Truths that our minds have been going through the rounds of the samsara since beginningless time, accumulating all kinds of, suffering. So now I'm probably going to go over this, do this sutra in halves and do about the first half of it this evening and do the last part of it next week, because there's a lot in it. And it's the one sutta that probably has the most information about the five aggregates in any one kind of place. And so the Buddha was giving a symbol to all the monks that, it's nice to, again, like I've done before sometimes, to set the scene of the sutta. So you can imagine out on a beautiful full moon night, out in the open. They were sitting out in the open with, there was like more than 60 monks there. And they had been, meditating for some time. And then there was a a break in the meditation. And then a certain monk stood up from his seat. I'm just going to read a little bit of it here. And a certain monk rose from his seat, arranged his upper robe on one shoulder, and saluted the Buddha and said, "Venerable Sir, I would ask the Blessed One about a certain point. If the Blessed One would grant me an answer to my question." And then the Buddha said, "Sit down on your own seat, bhikkhu, and then ask what you like." Now, he was quite very polite about it, but he didn't. Actually, when if the monk or especially the Buddha, but even if a monk is sitting down, then one should not stand, in front of them, or especially, ask the Dhamma question. So he wanted the Buddha to sit down and ask what he likes. Now, in the notes to the sutta, this particular monk actually was already an arahant, and he was the teacher of 60 monks. So this monk had his own little group of disciples, like so many of the arahant disciples of the Buddha had, like Sariputta and Moggallana. They had their own groups of students. And so he was teaching 60 monks meditation, the Dhamma. But it seems that, they were practicing probably a combination of samatha and the four foundations of mindfulness, and, trying to develop some of the insights and the insight knowledges, based on the five aggregates. But the five aggregates for some people is a little bit obtuse, and it's not easy to really, understand the depth of or the intricacy of the five aggregates and how they are, how they really, are our whole experience, our whole life and mind is really a process of the five aggregates. But and of course, eventually it's seeing the emptiness and the no self nature of the five aggregates that is the tantamount to, or the experience of enlightenment. So anyway, these monks had not attained the enlightenment, even though they'd been practicing the meditation, but not attaining the path and fruits, and not even they had attained yet the Sotapanna. And so this monk was asking a question to the Buddha, not particularly for himself, but he wanted his students to hear the Buddha's own explanation of the aggregates. So this monk was asking very poignant or specific questions, so hopefully that these student monks would be able to, get it, and to therefore help to deepen their practice. And so the monk asked the Buddha, "Are these not, Venerable Sir, the five aggregates affected by clinging?" And then he goes on, that means the material form, feeling, perception, volitions, and the consciousness aggregate. The Buddha replies, "Yes, these are the five aggregates affected by clinging." And then that monk said, "Good, Venerable Sir. And then I'd like to ask you another question." So he asked the Buddha a further question. "But, Venerable Sir, in what are these five aggregates affected by clinging rooted?" And then he said, "These five aggregates affected by clinging are rooted in desire." Now, I want to go back and explain the clinging, because these are part of the craving and clinging are part of the paticca samuppada, which I talked about actually several times in the last few Dhamma talks on some different websites and different Zoom broadcasts in the recent past. And so clinging is the upadana. And clinging, basically, there's 4 types of clinging. Clinging to sensual desires. That means clinging to the sense objects of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and our thoughts. We cling to them. That means strong attachment. And then we have clinging to views. People have different viewpoints. And religious viewpoints, and nowadays, with this QAnon and conspiracy theories, a lot of people are clinging to these spurious types of viewpoints. And then there's the clinging to rites and rituals, getting attached to specific ways of doing things, thinking that it's really, really important, or by doing rituals that you will get it'll help purify the mind. But that was specifically aimed at probably the Brahmins of the day who were clinging to these Vedic rituals, thinking that bathing in holy water or circumambulating holy mountains would wipe out a lot of your past karma. So the clinging to rites and rituals, and then clinging to a doctrine of self, thinking in some way or another this self exists, both not exist, will be completely wiped out at the time of death, and so many viewpoints. Anyway, so he's saying, what is this clinging rooted in? And then the Buddha says, desire. Because depending on desire arises clinging. So desire is in the root, and then clinging to these objects, and these 4 types of clinging comes from the desires, the basic desire and wanting for different things. Now, he says, and then he goes on to ask him, this is very interesting, this monk is asking very pointed questions, because this is the crux of the matter with the mind and the clinging to the aggregates. So this monk was an arhat, so he understood very well, but he wanted the Buddha to asking these specific questions in a specific order, so that these monks would hear it very clearly from the Buddha. So he says, is that clinging the same as these 5 aggregates? Affected by clinging, or is the clinging something apart from the 5 aggregates affected by clinging? Now, this might seem a little bit maybe obscure. So he's saying, is the clinging the same as the 5 aggregates? Or is the clinging something apart from the 5 aggregates? And so it's very interesting, the Buddha's reply. He said, monk, that clinging is neither the same as the 5 aggregates, nor is the clinging something apart from the 5 aggregates. And then he says, it is the desire and lust in regard to the 5 aggregates that is the clinging there. So because of the desire and the lust, and that also could mean the aversion too, both because desire is both wanting to have something and wanting to get away from something. So it's that strong desire to the 5 aggregates that is the clinging there. And then the monk goes ahead and asks Buddha further question. Can there be diversity in the desire and lust regarding these 5 aggregates of clinging? And the Buddha replies, yes, there can be, bhikkhu. And here someone thinks, may my material form be thus in the future. May my feelings be such and such way in the future. May my perceptions, may my volitional formations, may my consciousness be this way or that way in the future. So they're hoping that, they're projecting how they want their feelings, their form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness in the future. And of course, that's what people are doing. They're thinking, oh, next month I want to have these pleasurable feelings. I'm going on a holiday somewhere, and they're anticipating or they're hoping they're going to get pleasurable feelings by visiting the best restaurants and wherever they're going. Or maybe the fear, or projecting fear into the future. And everybody would have a different variety of desire and lust in regard to these 5 aggregates. So then that's the Buddha says, and thus there is diversity in the desire and lust regarding these 5 aggregates. But because it would change depending on different situations that you're in, the desire and aversion to various things can, change. I mean, change in intensity. It could be very, very severe and strong, or it could be more mild, or it could even be changed. One time you might have desire for the thing, and then you might have an indifferent feeling for it the next time. So, the feelings and volitional formations are, always changing about these, in our experiences. And then this is a very interesting part of this. Then the monk says, Venerable Sir, in what way does the term aggregates apply to the aggregates? So now the Pali word for aggregates is khanda, which means like a heap. But in English, these are translated words. Aggregates, it's translated from the Pali, so all these words, and that's why sometimes it's a little confusing. But an aggregate basically means a collection of things. And so this is how the Buddha explains it. He said, monks, any kind of material form, whatever, whether past, future, or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near. These are all part of the material form aggregate. And as we've learned before, actually, the aggregates, or the material form, is basically, the way that the material form, the vibration and the solidity, fluidity, heat, and motion. Basically, it's the way that the life force, or it's made up. All material matter is made up of cells, atoms, and electrons, basically. And what it means is basically it's energy. So even all material form is what I like to say, condensed energy, because if you press millions or billions of atoms and cells together, then you might get a a small stone, or a fingernail, or just any material object, or some drops of water, and so on, heat. So anyway, and whether it's past or present, so even when we remember, just thinking about a material form, you can cling to that. Oh, last month I saw this beautiful thing here or there, and you may, that attachment to it may come up again. So even just remembering a form from the past is part of this aggregate, this collection. So basically everything that we've experienced, in this life, even in the previous lives, that we've kind of accumulated, all these things have accumulated in the unconscious, so to speak, and they're remembered. And we then bring back these memories and lust and desire or aversion and fear for any of these forms, material forms that we had in the past. We hear about an earthquake, in the past, in 1900 or something, some earthquake, and we go, oh my gosh, all these people died and all these things happened. So that that's affecting us in the future, in the present, with worry and about maybe another earthquake or volcano or hurricane, any natural disaster. So all these things, whether it's in the past or you're projecting it into the future, all of these things belong to that the aggregate, of material form. And then he says, any kind of feeling whatsoever, and he repeats that whole list, whether past, future, or present, internal or external. So we have these feelings in us, and the feelings we see outside of us. Those are the external material forms and so on. Or the feelings that people are experiencing, their pains. And then the perceptions, volitional formations, and the consciousness, which virtually means anything we could possibly experience, whether it's from many lifetimes in the past, if it happens to come up, his memories and so on, or the future, or of course the present. So, it virtually nothing is left out. In any kind of consciousness, whatever, far or near. So the Buddha says, in this way, monk, that the term aggregate applies to the aggregate. It is just the collection of every single material form, feeling, perception, volition, or consciousness that we have going back, so many lifetimes. And that's why it's so very complex, and we cling to them, and that identity is that we're taking them for self, and that identity is continually being reasserted and generated every time we have the experience. And so I hope that that you can be writing any questions that come up about any of these things. Please write them down in the chat room. But I'm just going to go over this one more section, and then stop and perhaps some discussion about it, because I don't want to go over. There's so much in here that it needs to be thoroughly kind of digested. What is the cause? The cause and condition. This other monk is asking the Buddha again. What is the cause and condition, Venerable Sir, for the manifestation of the material form aggregate. And then what is the cause and condition for the feelings aggregate, perceptions aggregate, formations aggregate, and the consciousness aggregate. So how do they arise? And he says, the four great elements, monk, are the cause and condition for the manifestation of the material form aggregate. So, I've just mentioned that a little bit just now, that again, it's the four great elements. That means the earth element, water element, fire element, and air element. But it's important to understand that these are not something you dig up from the ground. These are not like chemistry, the chart of elemental charts that you find in, I guess it's chemistry, there's 100 and so, elements, like gold, iron, and so on. This is not that. And it means, anything that is anything that has a solid texture or occupies space is included in the material aggregate. And so basically, it means, as I just mentioned before, the way that the life force, how atoms and molecules have come together and made different objects. So, everything in the material world is made up of cells, molecules, atoms, electrons, and those other things. And same with the water and even the fire and the air element. Now, all these four elements are in every thing of matter, but different things are predominate. So in a rock, there's also water element, fire element, and air element, but it's predominantly the earth element that's predominant in something like a rock. Now in water, there's also earth element there, and fire element, and air element, but the water element, the fluid nature is predominant. And then it was the same with the fire and air. So that's how we kind of recognize. And that's how we recognize everything. Basically, everything you feel, you recognize it as you're saying, oh, that's water or fluid, that's the wind, that's a heat, or that's something solid. These four elements they're also internal and external. So there's the same four elements within our body as you find out in the world also. So the cause and the condition for the material aggregate is these four elements. And these four elements also have derivative elements like color, sound, smell, taste, and so on. These are also belong to the material aggregate. And then what is the cause and condition of the feelings aggregate and the perceptions aggregate and the formations aggregate? So these next three aggregates, feelings, perceptions, and volitional activity, they have the contact as their source of manifestation. In other words, one of these elements comes through the senses, like a sound vibration is the earth element. And when it strikes our ear, for example, that's the contact. And then the feeling arises, feeling and perception. We recognize the material aggregate and give it some, name and label. And then the memory of that arises. So the same way with whenever we see something, color is the material aggregate. And whenever we see something that our mind creates, this from the color and shape of some objects coming on the eye, then we're seeing various forms. So anyway, it's the contact. Depending on contact arises feeling, and as well as perception. Perception, so feeling again is the pleasant, painful, or neutral sort of way that we're first identifying an object. So first, the material vibration, the material aggregate, those are the things that are actually coming through our senses and producing the contact. And based on that, the feeling arises, the perception, the feeling is again the pleasant, painful, or neutral tone of that vibration. So kind of see if you can imagine this. When you hear a sound, then that sound is, traveling through the nervous system on its way to the brain. And as it's going through the nervous system, it's picked up as being something pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And when it reaches the brain, then you remember what it was. The perception arises. That's a certain type of object. And then based on the memory, you react to that object with desire, aversion, or some other reaction, the volitional formation. So those three aggregates are really the mental process: feeling, perception, and volition. They often arise just, spontaneously. For the average person, there's no way you really can control that. Not in the beginning anyway. You can control the volitional formations through meditation, but generally. So those are the cause and condition. Nothing arises without a cause and condition. And then he asks, what is the cause and condition for the mentality and materiality, or the consciousness? So mentality and materiality is the cause condition for the consciousness aggregate. So the consciousness aggregate is sort of, separate from the form, feeling, perception, and volition. These are actually the objects, make up the objects in the mental form activity. But it's the consciousness that is able to experience it. Without consciousness, you wouldn't have any contact. So the consciousness arises as a kind of a reaction to that contact. So anyway, the consciousness normally won't arise unless there's the material form, feeling, perception, and volition, the nama rupa. And in some other sutras, and consciousness is also the cause and condition for the mentality and the materiality, the name and the form. Actually, the words name and form are interesting because it's called nama rupa. So the material aggregate is called the rupa. And the meaning of it means it can be pounded and pulverized and eventually destroyed, because it's nothing. Eventually, all these material forms can be destroyed. And the name, the feeling, perception, and volition names that form. What gives the form actually makes it real to us. Otherwise, it's just an empty vibration. So this mentality and materiality, the form, the name and form, The name gives the form its reality, and without the form, the name won't arise. So it's they arise together, and the consciousness is what's aware of this object that has been created out of these aggregates of form, feeling, perception, and volition. Again, it may sound a little bit confusing, but that's why it can only be understood in a deep meditation. So that's how those aggregates come to be in our actual experience. And also, when the consciousness is reborn, it needs also the materiality and the nama rupa. It needs the materiality, it needs feeling, perception, and volition in order for that consciousness to create a new being in the next life too. But anyway, so I'm going to stop here, and we're going to continue the second half of this sutta next week, because there's a lot. It's very deep, and there's a lot of things to consider. So I don't want to rush it, and I hope that you were able to read. It's a very short sutta, actually. It's only 3 or 4 pages. But if you haven't been able to read any of it, I sent out the attachment on Monday, I think, and tried to, find that email and open that attachment and read the sutta, and especially the second half of the sutta. Now, I hope that somebody has asked a few questions, and then we can sort of entertain or look at some of these questions. And so let's see. As I understand the text, there are 2 sets of aggregates: those with clinging and those with clinging. Is it correct to say that the aggregates with clinging are those of the ordinary run-of-the-mill person, and the aggregates without clinging are those of the arahants? Okay, that's what you mean by the 2 sets of aggregates. Yeah, they're called the 5 aggregates of clinging because, that's what our conditioned life is based on, the clinging and identification to them. But the arahant also has 5 aggregates, but there's no clinging, so they don't cause the suffering. They don't cause the mental suffering, the dukkha. So that's why even the paticca samuppada, I was giving some talks on that recently, and for those of you who heard those talks. And for the arahant, that paticca samuppada means birth and death already had ceased for the arahant. But he still had a body, because it's talking about the birth and death of these, the clinging and the suffering. And the Buddha had physical pains in the body and so on, but he didn't mentally suffer from them. So, only the arahant has the aggregates without the clinging, but then that's his last life, and so there's not going to be another set of aggregates arise from that particular mental stream, because it gets disbanded at the time of the death of an enlightened person. But for an unenlightened person, those aggregates they're dispersed at the time of death, but they re-arise again in the rebirth. whether it's going to be as a material body, as a human or animal, or it's going to be in a deva realm. There's a different process for that going on, but still the aggregates, they come back together. So I hope that answered your question. The form aggregate starts as a fertilized egg. When does the karmic energy, previous life, come into the single cell organism? That energy which guides the moment of conception, according to the Theravada, viewpoint of the rebirth process. At the moment of conception, the mother and father are providing these material aggregates in terms of their chromosomes, that form that first cellular organism. So that one cell organism is already the materiality. And the consciousness then comes and joins together with that to the consciousness. Without the consciousness, that organism won't develop. So the consciousness is sort of that spark that then, as you're saying in this question, it causes that single cell to grow into the next form. And that consciousness, has the karmic imprints in it too. Now, if that consciousness, if let's say that's a basis for miscarriage, actually, from how a Buddhist probably would explain, or how I see the idea of a miscarriage is that material form, in one way or another, was not able to sustain that consciousness that came to it, and so it aborted itself. It flew the coop, so to speak, and then because of that consciousness leaving, the fetus, whatever it was, died. So that's how he said, I normally try to explain this kind of idea about, especially like with miscarriages and the consciousness. But I don't know if that's exactly the way it is, but these things are very abstruse and they're not easy to understand or try to, understand with our limited intelligence. So. Is it correct to assume that the four elements support each other, that one cannot exist without the other three? Well, that's what you find in the, I believe in the Abhidhamma and so on, and what we actually read in the Sutta, that, all four of these elements are they're integral to any material form, because as we know, this body is 80% water. Isn't that what the biologists try to tell us? So even though we might weigh 100 pounds or 150 pounds of flesh and blood, and that's what looks the most, yet there's air also. There's space between the cells too. So there's space and there's water. That's why we get dehydrated, and there's oozes, a lot of liquids ooze out, when the body dies. So, and then there's the heat also. It's the heat in the body that allows for the growth. So, and so at least it's fairly easy to see how these four elements, they all, exist in let's say a human animal body, but when you talk about a rock, people might, but even a physicist would probably say, well, even a rock has space, air, in it. You can crack it and it will break apart. You couldn't break apart if there was absolutely no space, or air in between the atoms. Atoms, again, we're talking about something so small that, it's impossible to see it as we know. So, yeah. Okay. This other question is this sutta related to dependent origination? I tried to read dependent origination, but don't understand. But I get a better understanding with your explanation. Well, the 5 aggregates are what are involved in the dependent origination. The consciousness, in the volitional formations, the ignorance, because of ignorance, which is part of the mind we bring with us, and then the volitional formations, which are these nama, producing the consciousness, and it's the 5 aggregates, form and feeling that we're reacting to, and we have the craving, grasping, and clinging to these aggregates, and they were accumulating more karma, and so, yeah, it's related to the dependent origination. It would be nama rupa. So in the dependent origination, go back, and it's the 3rd, I believe, depending on ignorance, rise, volitional formations, depending on consciousness, name and form. So it's the 4th. It's the 4th sort of link in the dependent origination. The consciousness, name, and form. So the 3rd and the 4th, the 5 aggregates are there, and the 3rd and the 4th link of dependent origination. Do the 3 mental elements of feeling, perception, volition allow consciousness to appear? It seems that they do, yes. That's what arises with contact. So it's the feeling that we become conscious of. The consciousness arises as a kind of a reaction to that. And that's what stimulus. So the consciousness may be sleeping. Let's say you're sleeping, and all of a sudden a big bang happens in the house, or some noise or whatever, and it comes through the ear and it penetrates your sleep, and then you wake up, right? So it's because of the sound. It's that contact that woke up the slumbering consciousness. And then you perceive it, you recognize what the object was, and then you react to it. Maybe you jump out of bed or you go back to sleep. So, the consciousness, that's the object of the consciousness, is the material form, feeling, perception, volition, is what we're conscious of. Okay, so it looks like it's the end of these chat questions. Now, if anybody has any of those stimulated some other question, I guess. Otherwise, we can just take a break and then have our short little break, come back for the yoga, and then have our meditation practice again. Okay, so again, just remember that when you're reading the sutta, we left off on paragraph 10, and on the sutras, the paragraphs are kind of numbered. So we finished paragraph 9, and next week we'll review a bit, and then we'll go on from paragraph 10 in the Mahapunnama Sutta, and number 109 in Majjhima Nikaya. Okay, so let's take is there another question in the chat box? Oh. Okay. Okay, let's take a short break, come back in a few minutes, and have our yoga. Bhante, are you there? Okay. Yeah, I wanted to get my screen. Can you hear me?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay. Okay, so try to stand straight, relax your arms at the sides, gently close the eyes, feel your feet pressing the floor. Try to feel the height and the weight of the body over the feet. Then begin some deep breathing, deep, slow breathing, holding the air in the lungs a few seconds. Just cultivating this basic present moment mindfulness. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Now you can open the eyes and just observe as I lead you through these exercises, coordinating them with that same deep, slow breathing, repeating each one 3 times. And again, just we're going to focus on feeling, especially the material aggregate, or all the sensations that you're feeling in the body are part of the material aggregate, as well as the feelings aggregate. And you have pleasant, painful, or neutral feelings. So let's try to understand, cultivate that understanding of this, the 4 elements. So on the in-breath, push up or raise the arms over the head, interlock the fingers, turn the palms up, straighten the arms, stretch your head back, arch the lower back, feel the sensations, material aggregate. Out breath, touch the top of the head. Might feel a pleasant sensation, the feelings aggregate. Again, in breath, palms up, straighten the arms. Stretch the head back, bend back a little bit. Out breath, touch the top of the head. In breath, 3rd time, hold that upward stretch longer. Bend back a little more. Feel the sensations, material aggregate. Release the fingers, out breath, arms back to the sides. And relax. Just feel those increased sensations. If there's any little pains, that's the feeling aggregate. Or if there's some pleasant sensation, it's the feeling aggregate. But it's really just those vibrations, material vibrations that are experienced as painful or pleasant. Clothing touching the skin, or the pulse of blood inside, whether internal or external, it's the same material vibration. Okay, with the next in breath, push up on the toes, raise the arms over the head in this way, facing the hands toward each other, and stretch. Out breath, come back down, arms to the side, feet to the floor. Use the air element to help lift the body up in breath. Stretch. Out breath. It's the air element that's actually allowing the body to move up and down. It's like hydraulics. Again, in breath, up. Out. If you feel any warmth in the body, that's the heat vibration, temperature vibration. Let's try to think in terms of just material vibrations, not this body or my particular body parts. And next we'll do the side bending. On an in-breath, raise both arms up. Keep the fingers and arms straight, close to the head. On the out-breath, bend over the right side as far as you comfortably can. Feel the stretch in the sides. Keep the arms parallel to each other like railroad tracks. In-breath, lift up. And again, the other side, out-breath. In-breath. Out-breath to the right. In. Out. In. Once more to each side. Out. The out breath, lower the arms. Relax. Feel those increased sensations, material vibration. At any time you identify a body part, like my hand or foot or side or chest, that's a perception. Just remember standing. Standing, that's also a perception. Okay, now spread the feet apart, about 3 feet. We'll do twisting from side to side, keeping the arms out at the side. Try to keep the arms up parallel to the floor. Breathe in. On the out breath, twist to the right. Keep your eyes focused on the hand going back. Don't lose the balance. In breath back to the front. Let the feet turn with the body. And then go twist to the other side on the out breath. In breath, front. Just repeat that 2 more times, alternating sides with the breathing to the right. In to the left. So all those different vibrations that you're feeling, that's just the material vibrations, material aggregate, constant state of flux and change, as well as the feeling aggregate. Just relax. Just feel each foot pressing the floor. Feeling of hardness or contact. Solid feeling is the earth vibration. Breathing going in and out is the air vibration. They're predominant, so we recognize them, but the other elements are also there, subtle forms. And the consciousness aggregate, the fact that you're consciousness, that you're conscious means there's constantly consciousness arising. Okay, now keeping the legs apart, we'll do the forward and backward bending. Let the hands touch the front of the legs. You can just be careful with the back bends. Don't bend back too far the first time. Breathe in. On the out breath, bend forward, but keep the head up, looking out straight ahead. Let the hands come to the kneecaps. Keep the arms and the legs straight if you can. Try to flatten the spine. In breath, lift up. Move the hands under the buttocks for support and carefully bend back on the out breath. Keep the eyes open. Look up at the ceiling. In breath, carefully lift up. Be aware of the sensations. And the next out breath, let the hands come below the knees. Still keep the head up, legs straight. Feel the stretch in the back of the legs. It's kind of a painful sensation. That's the feelings aggregate. When you're aware that your legs is the perception, the consciousness. In-breath up. Once more, the back bend. Try to bend back a little more. In-breath, lift up. And the third time, just let the hands come down as far as you can toward the feet. And then just hold that, your legs or feet, hold that position longer. Feel the stretch in the back of the legs. Feelings aggregate. Perceptions aggregate. Material aggregate consciousness. They're all right there, occurring simultaneously. We think about it as the formations aggregate. In-breath, lift up. And one more time, the back bend, be careful. In-breath, lift up. And then just relax. Might feel some pleasant sensation, feeling aggregate. The sensation itself is the material aggregate, but it feels pleasant. That's the feeling. And now bring the legs back together. Just try to feel the whole standing body. Just do one last exercise. The head turning. So on an in-breath, turn the head to the right. Look over your right shoulder. The out-breath, turn 180 degrees back to the left. And look over the left shoulder. In-breath back to the right. Concentrate into the neck vertebrae. Out-breath left. Feel them loosening up. In-breath to the right. Out-breath left. On the in-breath, let the head stop in the center. Feel the whole body. Rest the attention behind the eyes. And feel the outline of the whole body. All those 5 aggregates are always there. And our continuous experience, material vibration, feeling, perception, volition, consciousness, the sense of I, me, or mine. Okay, now let's come back to our seats, get ready for the the sitting awareness. Bring these 5 aggregates back to the sitting position. And now just get comfortable in your meditation position. Try to sit straight. Just align the back of the head and the spine in a straight line. And just gently close the eyes. Just going to move our awareness through the body, feeling the material vibrations, the elements. Just bring your total attention down to feel where the buttocks press the seat. Just feel that earth vibration, that hardness or solidity, that 100 or more pounds of body pressing the seat because of the contact, the feeling, perception arises. Recognizing your buttocks pressing the seat is a perception. And the consciousness. And try to mentally feel the way the legs are bent or tucked underneath, where the legs are crossed or the feet touching the floor underneath. If you can feel where the clothing touches the skin, that's also the earth vibration. Where the legs are crossed, or where the feet press the floor, earth vibration. Recognizing the body parts, the perception, or any thoughts or worries about it, the volitional formations of the painful feelings, aggregate, the sense of I am meditating, all the 5 aggregates are right there in the same spot. Now moving the attention up to feel the weight of the arms hanging from the shoulders. Again, try to apply the same understanding. Relax the shoulders. Or even recognizing where the shoulders are is the perception. Feel where the clothing rubs the skin of the shoulders, material vibration, neutral feeling, or maybe just any other sensations you might be noticing. They're just the material aggregate, all these different sensations that are producing feelings. And perceptions and the consciousness. And now feel the head balanced on top of the neck. And feel the lips touching together. The upper lip touches the lower lip. It's also the earth vibration. Might be a neutral sensation or a pleasant sensation. If there's any moisture on the lips or in the mouth, it's the water vibration. Feel the tongue inside the mouth. Soft flesh, also the earth vibration. Feel any other sensations on your face. Feeling of the skin stretched over the skull. Your forehead, nose, cheeks, chin. And now feel the eyes and the sockets. Sort of rest your attention just behind the eyes. Just feel the sensation in the eyes, eyelids stretched over the eyeballs. sort of kind of just watching the eyes sitting in the socket. It's the consciousness sort of watches, feels all these different body parts. Now, from that point behind the eyes, let the awareness expand a little bit. Try to feel the outline of the sitting body. Just opening up the lens of awareness. And feel that general sense of the sitting body. There's also a perception. This body is that aggregate of sensations, all those millions of vibrating cells. It's the aggregate, the material aggregate. Okay, now again begin some deep, slow breathing. It'll take a few seconds to expand the abdomen, rib cage, and chest. Really feel that movement and air vibration as you breathe in. Hold the air in the lungs a few seconds. Feel those subtle vibrations. And the consciousness, awareness. And the out breath. Just continue cultivating this basic awareness of breathing in, letting go of the past and future. And breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Try to feel the last bit of air go out of the lung. And the next expanding in breath. Just try to continue that deeper, slow breathing, a little bit longer. Just try to observe all those different, those the elements, especially as the air element goes in and out, it's pushing all the material aggregates, the rib cage, the flesh. Other organs are being touched by that expansion and contraction. You can easily see the earth element, the air element, parts of the body this material body may not feel too much heat or water, might feel saliva in the mouth, especially that air element and the earth element. And then, of course, the perception, even the idea that you're breathing in or out is a perception. And of course, the consciousness is also there. They're always changing with each moment. As the material vibrations change, the feelings, perceptions, and consciousness changes with it. We just develop this awareness of breathing in the center of the body. Let's try to feel the breathing body inside the larger sitting body. Just make this topic of the aggregates your vitaka and vichara, and also the investigation of Dhamma. Just be like a scientist sitting in the laboratory, dissecting the body and mind into the 5 aggregates. First, the material aggregate, because everything else is based on that. There's material vibrations producing the feelings, perceptions, identifying them. Are there any thoughts about them? Like, dislike, emotions, confusion, the volitional formation. And the consciousness is always there. It's the camera, the mental camera. And all these aggregates are continually changing moment by moment. And in your own home, if you hear any sound, It's also the sound vibration, or even this voice. It's just a sound vibration, materiality, producing contact in your mind. You identify the voice being so and so, think about it. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. The mind has wandered. Let's take a couple deep, slow breaths. Bring the mind back into the 5 aggregate, body and mind. The mind is calm enough to see how quickly those aggregates are constantly changing. Material vibrations, feelings, perceptions, thoughts or urges. The consciousness changing with it. This process is powered basically by the accumulated past karma, accumulation, becoming, desire. Combination of all of these 5 aggregates that we cling to or identify as being me or mine and myself. It's the consciousness, especially, that we think is my self. I call the body myself, consciousness myself. But ultimately, even the feeling of I, me, or mine, just a sankhara created within the mind, is a vibration, a mental vibration. And because we cling to it, it appears as it's actually something very real. from that sound contact, what kind of thoughts or feelings, aggregates arose based on the sound contact. Sambe sankara anicchati yada panyaya pasati atani bindati dukhi esamaggo visuddhiya. All conditioned things, the five aggregates, this body, mind, and the world are impermanent. When one sees this with the eye of wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to purity, to freedom. And thus spoke the Buddha. Now mindfully place your hands at the edge of the knees. And take one more deep, slow breath. On the in-breath, stretch the head back, pull the hands against the knees to arch the spine. You know, the material vibration. And lift the head up on an in-breath, and on the out-breath, press the chin to the top of the chest to stretch the neck vertebrae. And lift the chin up level on an in-breath. And relax on the out-breath. Put a smile on your face. Okay, friends. So this brings our evening to a close. And how many of you are able to identify some of the aggregates in that in your meditation? Actually, you know, the five aggregates is really a, you know, the topic or theme of really mindfulness and vipassana, especially meditation. And it's, you know, the ability to observe and, you know, how they arise or arising and changing every moment, and how they interact, and how, you know, our self-identity and our habits around them are really what drives all of our, you know, actions. And so, you know, basically we try to, you know, cultivate a more impersonal attitude as part of the Satipatthana meditation. We'll talk more about that next week, perhaps. But seeing these aggregates as, you know, again, not me or mine, they're just these impersonal phenomena that come and go, powered by karma, and we're just sort of the sort of managing this body and mind, so to speak. Anyway, during the week, just try to, especially when something grabs at you, just try to, I say, oh, okay, that's the material, grasping at the material aggregate, grasping at the feeling, grasping at the perception. That's why they're called aggregates of clinging. All right? So again, mindfulness today keeps dukkha away. And so try to read the last half of this sutta, the Mahapunnama Sutta. We'll be ready for next week. Right? So
Namo Buddhaya, Bhante. Thank you.
Bhante.
Namo Buddhaya.
Buddhaya. Thank you, Bhante.
You're all welcome.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you.
Prashant.